The Invoices function is located in your Payments button on the left-hand side, and then at the top of the new menu you'll see Invoices, which will load by default when you click Payments. Before we go through this and you set up your first invoice, if you need to add tax settings for your location, it's very important that you do that first. So if you don't need to do that, bear with me for about 30 seconds where I show you how to add that in. If you do need to do it, you'll see this button here called Tax Settings. Just click on this and click on Add Tax. And then you can click the name of your tax, the percentage rate, the description of how you'd refer to that, which is likely the same as the name, and then your tax ID if applicable. For the purpose of this demo, we've added a tax called GST at a rate of 10%. Now, getting started with invoices. This invoice area here, you'll see a search function across the top where you can search for existing invoices. You'll see a summary in the middle of the screen about what payments are due and what payments are unpaid overdue. You'll also see a settings cog here. When you click that settings, what that will do will allow you to customize the terms/notes that sit at the bottom of each invoice. And you'll see this in a minute when we create a live invoice. So in this case, we have thank you for your business. Then you'll have the option to create a new invoice, or you can click on any of the invoices in the list below to edit them. But first thing right now is we're going to create a new invoice. This will bring up the invoice creation screen. It will show your logo in this location at the top left, and then it will have your business details in the top right, and then you can click build to here and add your client as to who you want to send the invoice to. Now you can either create a new contact here, or you can select an existing contact. So in this case, we're going to use an example person that doesn't exist, Paulina. And you can see it automatically puts in their details. You can also select the country in this drop down just here. For the purpose of this demo, we're using a tax, so we're using Australia. To adjust the date of issue of the invoice, simply click on the actual date of issue and you can change that date here. And you can also adjust the due date with the same method, just clicking on the date and selecting the date that it is due. The next thing you need to do is add an item to your invoice. You can either create plus new item, which will allow you to create a brand new item, which you can either save for later use, or just add new item and it will just be used for this invoice. But you can also select from your created products that you've previously created in your product area. That area is covered in a different video. That's what we're going to do this time, is to create a test product with our test price point and hit save, which gives us our $50 product. Now, if you're using tax, you do need to manually add the tax at this button by clicking add tax. If it's not required for this invoice or not required at all, simply ignore that. In this time, we're going to click add tax and select the taxes from what we added before and hit save. The next step is to either add an item or continue down below your subtotal and determine whether or not you're adding a discount to your invoice. If you are, click the add discount button and adjust this slider to where you need it to be. So in this case, we're doing a 25% discount and we hit save. Note that your tax will be processed as a percentage against the amount after the discount. So it does apply the correct amount. In this case, the amount is discounted to $37.50. So accordingly, we see a GST, our 10% tax of $3.75. Once you've created your invoice and you're happy with it, you have a few options. The first thing is these three little dots up here allow you to preview the invoice, or you can record a payment across this invoice, which I'll cover in a moment. You can save the invoice, which will save it as a draft, or you can send the invoice. There's also a drop down here, copy and mark as sent, which will allow you to copy the actual link for the invoice. In this case, we're going to hit the send button, and this will give us the option as to whether we want to send it via email and text, email only, or text only. Under additional options, you can choose whether or not this is going to be a test invoice or a live invoice. Okay, in this case, we're going to select test and we're going to select email only and select send invoice. This will bring you back to your invoices dashboard area where you can see a summary of all your invoices. Now, in this case, we have a few different invoices. And so if you wanted to edit an existing invoice that was in draft, you simply click on that invoice directly and it will reopen that invoice and you can continue where you left off. Alternatively, there are a few extra features here from this screen. One is if we use this invoice here, we can click on actions and we can copy the link for that invoice, which you could then send to someone. You can download the invoice or you can delete the invoice. Now, when you're editing an invoice, if it's been sent, you can actually hit record payment and you can either charge a card, either a saved card that you've used previously, or you can manually enter in new card details there. Notice that you can also process a partial payment on that invoice by changing the amount in this top area here. You can also, on the record payment screen, select record manually and select how you received that payment, and then select the amount paid and the notes about that payment, and then hit submit, which will then mark that invoice as paid appropriately. As far as what the client receives when you use the invoice function, they'll receive an email that looks like this, and when they click on view invoice, it will load the invoice on this link and it will have a pay now button. In this case, this is the invoice that we already paid. It will normally look like this, and they can click pay the amount, and again they can just put their card details in and click pay. Now, whether or not it is paid by the client this way or whether you manually enter a payment, you'll see the status of your invoices on the right hand side here as to whether they're paid, due or draft, or overdue is another status as well. And finally, in the transactions tab right up at the top, you will see a record of any payments made, whether they be manual or automated through the process of the client just paying the invoice.